Astrid Naranjo, the Anti-Diet Dietitian, her bodybuilding diet secrets, successes, and what you can learn from them. Wow, a return guest and always a joy to speak with. Astrid is an accredited practicing dietitian, competitive bodybuilder, and advocate for balanced health and self-acceptance. Known as the Anti-Diet Dietitian, she promotes intuitive eating, body positivity, and fostering a healthy relationship with food. Astrid's journey into female bodying was not without its challenges. Reflecting on her start, she shares, quote, I always wanted to do it, but I never felt ready emotionally, mentally, or physically. I was not confident that I would be able to do it because I had issues with my relationship with food. End quote. Despite these struggles, she rose to become a decorated bodybuilder, earning her pro card, winning multiple medals, and being recognized as an Australian champion. Beyond the physical transformation, Astrid emphasizes personal growth, resilience, and the mental readiness needed for such a journey. Her experiences taught her the importance of support systems, especially the encouragement of her husband, of whom she says, quote, it was so nice to see that commitment that he had towards being my best supporter, which for me was hard at the very beginning because I wasn't sure if he was going to support me. End quote. Astrid's philosophy blends scientific expertise with personal insight, encouraging individuals to honor their unique journeys and prioritize emotional and physical well-being. Whether through her work or online presence, she inspires others to embrace self-compassion and cultivate confidence both inside and out. You can find Astrid at the show notes below and on Instagram at antidiet_dietitian. Thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator, subject matter expert from HowNotToDieGuy.com. And you're listening to my Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast, sponsored by State, the ultimate daily formula for optimum hormone health, stress management, energy, and performance. 100% natural and clinically proven ingredients. Provides everything you need to raise your game in a convenient gut-friendly capsule. And my new sponsor, Michael Mason of the Mason Survival Protocol. Links for my former shows are in the show notes below. Thanks for watching. And we're live. Welcome to the Straight Talk Mind and Muscle podcast. Welcome to my guest, a returning guest, which I love to say, Astrid Naranjo.
Yes,
Great to see you again.
it's a pleasure to see you again.
I
Thank you for
apologize for
having me.
you're most welcome. I apologize for getting up early. I just found out you're not a morning person.
That's okay. It's because I work until late because of my international clients.
Yeah.
So most of them, my clients, majority are from Europe or US, and sometimes nighttime is kind of the best time where they are awake. So meetings, calls, check-ins, I'll do them in the morning, for them, which is my night. So
Oh,
I go to bed around 1 a.m. sometimes, and then that's why I have to struggle to wake up early.
it's amazing how people put themselves out for others, and I didn't know that about you. I know all the work you do for everybody else in the nutrition and psychological space there, but really cool to see you put your body on the line somewhat there because it, working internationally, there is a massive time zone difference. So that's really interesting.
Yeah, Australia is not like the best place to live in when you have clients internationally, but hey, it is what it is, and it's good.
What a great place to step off on. You mentioned clients. Now, for the people who haven't listened to the first show, you have a new title, which is something to celebrate. But your first title is, you're the anti-diet dietitian, and I love
Right.
that title. That's what we titled the show last time. Yes, you're a dietitian, but what is your new title?
Oh, I suppose the same,
Oh,
but like
mm,
with a pro card.
yeah, there we go.
Let me show
A
you.
pro card in.
So that's my pro card.
Oh, congratulations.
And I got an overall, what is like this for
Wow.
wellness and all of these medals,
Oh, wow.
my trophy and IFBB, three
Oh,
medals more.
IFBB. So we're talking bodybuilding again for the listeners and the viewers that can't see that but don't know your background. We spoke originally about you wanting to do a contest prep kind of diet, a kind of journey. You literally got there, but you really lucked out and you won all the things. So congratulations. Let's step off there. Does that mean you're an Australian champion?
I am, yeah,
Wow.
in the natural federation, in
Yes.
that particular mess federation.
Great. So first question is, why would you do that? Why did you want to do that?
I think initially my motivation was that because I've been doing resistance training and lifting since I was quite young, over 20 years of working really hard on my body. It was mostly something that I wanted to try out and prove to myself that maybe I was built for. I've worked so hard to build a body that had a decent symmetry and physique that I think it was just a matter for me to prove my work that I've put in
Mm,
all these years. Also because I always wanted to do it, but I never felt like I was ready emotionally, mentally, physically, to a point that I would just say, hey, I am going to do it and I am going to do and I'm going to be successful, because
yes.
I was not very confident that I would be able to do it, because I had issues with my relationship with food. I would really struggle with hunger, appetite, managing my actual relationship with how I would approach nutrition, dieting. And I was not going to be in a good place.
Hmm.
So if at the beginning, I was not going to be in a good place, then at the end, it was going to be a really bad place. And so I really want to put things to try and see what would happen now that I was in a really good place after about 10 years of really working hard on improving my relationship with food, improving the the relationship with being okay with my body at any stage, also being able to being okay to with be hungry a little bit, and that was going to be okay as well. And understanding that any process is going to take a lot of work, but I also wanted to have an understanding, now that I have been a coach and a dietitian for so many years, to really try to see what my clients endure and understand how they feel and what hunger is like to these levels of leanness, that I think it gave me a to give me a much deeper perspective of what's really like being in the trenches. So that was kind of like a lot of different motivators that had a very strong helped me to be very committed and stay strong, and I guess pers I don't know if the word is, I guess, being resilient all the way till the end.
That's a great answer, and I do love your answers. I remember them from last time. Very considered, and you touched on all the reasons there. Now, for anybody wanting to find out how you improved your relationship with food, I recommend go back and listen to the original show. There's a lot of gold there of how you worked through that 10 years. And we touched on the result there. You know, you literally were just trying to see what it's like, experience that contest prep dieting. But then you moved on from the first competition to, hang on a sec, you're actually going to go win. So that motivation might have changed a little bit from the first competition to your last result, I'd suggest.
You mean between the two competitions?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I was quite surprised. Okay, I'm going from this one competition. I wanted to experience this journey, experience what my clients have gone through, make sure that I'm, as you said, I'm being okay with my body at any stage and being a bit hungry. And then suddenly you're going to go and win these competitions.
Yeah. So I guess part of me it's always been competitive. So when I do something, I do want to succeed and I want to do it really well.
Mm.
So when I mentioned that I wanted to compete, I really wanted to see what, if I did my best, how far could I get?
Hmm.
And I've always been someone who I'm very high achiever. So I wasn't I was trying to not put high expectations because it was going to be my first experience, but I wanted to push myself to be in the best position I could ever be. So I didn't have any regret that I didn't leave anything on the table. But it's been something that I've always been like when I did the only sport I did when I was a kid, it was swimming, and I every time I did my small competitions, I always won the first place. When I have competed in like even singing contest, I always aim to be the winner. Like I'm someone who's always striving to be in the best place as possible.
Yeah.
Same with my degree. When I completed my like school, I graduated with being the first in my class. When I studied my bachelor's degree and my university, I graduated the first in my class and honors and the best kind of like GPA average. And then again, it's like this has always been the way I am. I suppose I am built. I try to be the best in whatever I can, and just ask and demand from myself the as much as I can. I'm not always trying to be perfect because obviously perfection is really hard to achieve, but it's kind of like my competition is against myself. So how can I do better and be the best within whatever I do, knowing that I'm doing it for the sake of proving to myself that I can work hard and achieve what I am looking for.
Again, I love that answer. You said so many times, I did my best. I don't want to leave anything on the table. You're proving it to yourself. And you said a few times there, I want to win. But so many people I've seen in the bodybuilding space go in with the hope, hope they win and so on. But you want to do your best. And that's what I had as my mindset when I would go on stage. I want to look my best. And if the guy beside me, because this was a different era, was on roids and 10 kilos heavier, it's my bad luck. I can't compete against that at that time, but I did my best to get in my best shape at that time. So that's that mindset you were talking about before, being okay with your body because you know that you put in the work for you. And I think that's really, really shows why you've been successful. On that though, Astrid, I'd like to then ask, what was the impact on you doing this as a long preparation? You did it very cleverly. What's your impact on your life? Some things to consider when you answer that question is on your relationships and on your relationship with food as well. What was the impact there? Was it positive, negative? What occurred?
40 weeks long
Wow.
prep.
Wow.
I I think it was I still don't think it was a bad idea to have a that length just because I needed that time to become what I presented on stage.
Hmm.
It's not just about dieting or leaning out, which I still feel like that time helps to just get the flexibility and have the time to being able to make some mistakes along the way, not be super rigid, being okay to sometimes just have some fuck ups. If I did travel as well, I went on a cruise and I still was able to get on time to my stage. So I think all in all, the timing, especially for a first competitor who has no experience whatsoever, was a good amount of time to have that room of
Mm-hmm.
flexibility. And the other thing was that I needed to not just diet, but also become the person that I wanted to be on stage.
Yes.
And that was a lot of transformation in that emotional self-confidence and the feminine part of me that I had not developed in the past. Being able to walk on heels, pose, feel like I was a competitor, an
Mm-hmm.
athlete that
Mm-hmm.
that was going to present on stage, something that at the very beginning I couldn't even visualize myself being on stage. I couldn't even see myself on a bikini doing posing and stuff like that. As I started working on myself over all these weeks,
Mm-hmm.
with a posing coach, practicing consistently, showing up every day, I started, when you imagine something and you can't see it, you see like just blurry.
Mm-hmm.
I started like seeing more clearly that person on stage. I could like now I could start seeing more the shape of that person and less blurry until maybe 12 weeks out
Yeah.
is when I actually could see her clearly.
Mm-hmm.
And I was more confident. I could actually nail my posing and being confident that I was doing a really good job.
Yes.
So it took me a long time to actually do become on that person that I was not at the very beginning. And it's not just say when you prepare to something like this, especially the first time, it's not just about dieting, because that is one of the things that are really important. Yes, you have to have a really good conditioning if you want to be competitive on a stage, especially if you're talking about IFBB. Um, and that's what judges are looking for. It's not just about roids or size or things like that or
Exactly.
any other thing. They're looking for leanness and presentation and posing, and how do you do your like everything, what package you bring to stage.
Yeah.
So that's what I really wanted to become and work on. I want to see myself being more feminine, because I've always been not a tomboy, but I've always been rigid and like kickboxing and things that are more like aggressive. That is a very tough part of my myself,
Yeah.
or is not just not exploring that feminine part,
Yep.
I would say. Like I never wear dresses, or nothing that looks to me that I have developed that feminine part of me. So when I decided to do that, that was one of the reasons I wanted to do it as well, because I wanted to explore what would I be like if I actually have to be more feminine. I have to start walking on heels. The posing that we do in wellness is not like any kind of a masculine posing. You actually feel like a pageant,
Oh,
because
yes.
you
Yes.
you have to do the posing. You have to use your hands. You have to put your body in certain positions that like it really doesn't look like you are like a bodybuilder.
Yeah.
It's more like you are like a Miss Universe, just like with more muscle.
It's
That's it.
funny. It's funny you say pageant. You said it in your accent, which was beautiful. But I used to call bodybuilding a beauty pageant for males because it was a male-dominated thing.
Mhm.
So it's funny that you say that as well.
I do believe there's a strong component of that,
Yeah.
because you start seeing, and probably more so for bikini
Mm.
competitors, and but the more you kind of like start going in terms of muscularity, there's less of that. But bikini, there's like a super strong component of pageancy, and then yeah, wellness is kind of like in between, but this is still that component of like, yeah, the way you walk, the way you move your body, the like that feminine part, and all these details that you have to take into account.
Yep.
Plus, you're wearing a bikini, you're wearing heels, you have to learn how to pose, you have to learn how to walk.
Mm-hmm.
So all of the things, like all bodybuilding, or when you look at physique bodybuilding, or figure, or some of these other divisions, you say that they are barefoot, they're not doing anything, walking or doing anything like that. They just stare at you in the middle of the stage, and they do their posing.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. Very different.
So I needed to become that person. So 40 weeks, 36 weeks for the first one, and then 40 weeks for the last one that
Yeah.
I did on the natural bodybuilding in Australia.
And how about the impact on your relationships, friends, husbands, so on? And then I would suggest that your relationship with food also impacts that as well. What was that like?
It was interesting because, for example, with my husband, I think was a something that helped us be together more, which
Wow.
is strange,
Yeah.
but it was good because I never thought he would be so encouraging and so supportive.
Yep.
And he was the one who always wanted to kind of like take footage and record and ask me questions and do kind of like mini interviews, and he was always there to motivate me, and he was kind of like my first supporter when I was doing my show and like screaming at the back and recording. And it was so nice to see that commitment that he had towards being my best supporter, which for me was hard at the very beginning because I wasn't sure if he was going to support me at the very, like, to even begin with,
Of
because
course.
it is a very showy sport. Like, you're showing everything and you putting yourself on a very vulnerable place with just being on a bikini in front of a lot of people, and also show your journey and doing social media, putting your photos, showing your ass. Like, there's so many parts of this that I was super scared
Yeah.
that he wouldn't support me, that he
Yeah.
was going to get actually mad or be against me showing my body. So the fact that he was able to be part of this journey and being understanding and support me all the way throughout was really beautiful. It was really nice. The other aspects, I would say, with people, friends, I don't think that was much of a change because I'm not a very social person to begin with. I'm so into my work and into everything that I do. Is like I just don't have time for socializing. So I don't have many friends, but I suppose you could say that a lot of people that I had non-spoken with for years, suddenly when I started putting some of my pictures, they would comment on my pictures or talk to me and like, oh, that's interesting. Never talked to you before in so many years, and they kind of like came into my feed to say they had something to say, and always was like a positive encouragement or like congratulating me, which was nice.
Yeah.
Um, Around work, I suppose I try to be a little bit more ghosty
Yeah.
because I didn't want to speak with anyone. The longer I did my prep and the more I was depleted and less energy I had, I just wanted to go to work, do my job and go and leave. I didn't want to speak with anyone. I didn't want to do more talking. However, amongst the people that got to know that I was prepping, nurses. I work in a hospital, so
Hmm.
the nurses, even like the nuns or the, I don't know, a lot of different people around my work environment were super into learning more about it and
Right.
excited and stuff. Like sometimes when they would see me, they would follow up, oh hey, how are you going? How are you doing? So that was nice too.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a nice way to even connect with some people that I had never spoken with.
Yep.
And in terms of the biggest one, which is the one that you want to hear, is my relationship with food. This is a really unhealthy and tough sport. Okay. And the
I
longer,
agree, Astrid, I agree with you.
yeah.
I don't even go so far as to call it a sport. Um,
Mm.
it's my opinion, but it's also based on the effect of a sport: fitness, flexibility, strength, and so on. You don't really perform those. You're just showing your body. But I agree with you that it's unhealthy. But that's why you're here, to show it can be done in a healthy way.
Yeah. So that's where I'm kind of like coming from. It is a very tough sport. Um, when you think about everything that is on the line, I think because I did put in the work before and kind of started strong,
Hmm.
I try to really honor that work that I did with my relationship with food and my body. So on the relationship with body part, I think it was great because all the way through, I was always happy where I was at. Like and I, if I would have to go back, even the first day when I took my first pictures, I was fucking proud of me. Like,
Mm.
man, I look good. Like, I am ready to go on stage. And I had no idea that 12, 13 kilos lighter, I would go back and say, oh shit, I was not ready at all. I was, I had a lot of body fat to lose now that I am kind of in the other side. But when I was there, I was happy. And then
Yes.
I lost 2 kilos and I would take my pictures. Man, I look even better now.
Yep.
And then kind of like every step of the way, I always felt that I was loving who I was and
Yep.
what I had worked for. And even at the end of the prep, when I was so close to be kind of like quote unquote stage weight, which I am kind of like the leanest I've ever been in my life, I would say I don't like I wouldn't like to stay this way. I want to be a little bit heavier. I need to be healthy. And this is unsustainable for me. And I just don't feel good. I feel like I was dreading everywhere. I was always tired. I couldn't even perform well. My training was, it was like going to the gym and you have to do your work, but you just don't have the stamina, you don't have the strength. You feel like you're just working out to preserve the muscle that you have,
Yep.
but the enjoyment of actually training, the fun of that was gone. Like I
Wow.
had no, I was training because I had to,
Yep.
not because I would go with excitement and train because I was gonna perform and enjoy it. Like that's the reason why I train, because I
Yes.
something that really makes me and completes me. But at that, I got to a point where I had lost that drive and that joy because this wasn't no longer exciting. I
Yeah.
had no energy. I
Wow.
had I was so tired because I was training literally five to 6 days a week, full body. Most of the times when I talk about full body, it was really focused on legs
Hmm.
and shoulders for the most part, a little bit of arms, a little bit of back, a little bit of chest, but nothing crazy that I would say I was training every single part of my body. It was really focused on lower body to develop that asymmetrical look of having a disproportionate look between my lower body and upper body, which is needed for wellness.
Yes.
So with exercise, I think it's always been still a healthy relationship with exercise. And I have, even though it was hard and it was getting even harder at the end, I still think that I wouldn't leave exercise. And even after my show, I still wanted to show up to the gym and do, even if it was something lighter, if it was something more gentle, but it's still part of what I do and who I am.
Right.
So that was all the way through quite strongly connected to me. And then with the relationship with food, I have to say that I did practice a very different approach to potentially a different competitor, because I was not always 100% compliant to my calories. I would always try to listen a lot more to my body and my hunger cues, which is something that I don't think a competitor would do. I was very connected to my needs and what I was craving or what I was desiring. So my meal plan day to day, or my food choices, would literally be just listening to what I needed and what I wanted. I am someone who tends to make pretty solid choices nonetheless.
Yes.
So my diet, my base diet is very boring. It's very much the same all the time. So because I had developed this kind of like strong routine and choices, it was not a concerning part of me for me to listen to my body and know what I wanted to eat. But potentially it was putting a little bit of an extra risk that I was eating a lot more fiber. I
Mm-hmm.
was eating potentially sometimes a lot more protein, but it was something that it was just because I was listening to what I needed and what I wanted. Um, and that part was good, because that, I think that really helped me to have a very balanced approach to my the majority of my journey. Many times when I did have a craving or start feeling like I had a big urge to have something tasty, I would allow myself to do it. I would allow myself to have it and just get back right on track, rather than depriving myself and then end up binging, or just kind of like messing up with that relationship that I had worked so hard for. I didn't want to feel too restricted, and I just needed to know that I had the permission to give myself that small, tiny pleasure and then move on. Now, that was relatively easy to do. That's why I'm saying this is an unhealthy sport. I thought I would be able to keep up with that all the way through, but the closer you get to your competition and the leaner you get, the easier it is for your body to just change overnight
Wow.
in terms of like your physique. Like if you overeat on sodium or overdo it with carbohydrates, your body looks different from one day to another, a lot more different.
Yes.
And the leaner you get, and the more you start understanding that you have to be super conditioned, you can't just mess up with it. And so probably 12 weeks out, I knew things were going to get harder,
Mm-hmm.
but I didn't know that was going to be that hard. So 12 weeks, still not too bad. 8 weeks, 6 weeks, things are getting really dark, really hard.
Dark. That's an
Because,
interesting term. You've nailed it there.
yeah, because now the flexibility is way less. Even if I wanted to listen to my body or my hunger cues, now I am more hungry. my calories are lower. I'm doing more cardio than ever before. I'm still training 5 to 6 days a week. My sleep is not the best, and I'm hungry as fuck. And the more closer I get to stage, the more depleted I am, the more cravings I have. And I even started thinking and craving things that I usually rarely crave or
Mm-hmm.
eat. But I have always had them in a part of my room, because when I was healing my relationship with food, I needed to prove myself that I could just have that whenever I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
But I never wanted to have them, so they stay there forever. And I never open a packet of chocolate, even though they're still there, and they probably are like ready to throw on the bin.
Yeah.
But those strong desires for eating those things came back. Like I was always thinking about a chocolate biscuits. I never eat that. But
Yeah.
it was like coming this strong need for me to binge on those things. And I have to say that the closer I got to the last few weeks of prep, I did have some sleep ups. I did have some small binges. And that started kind of like proving that I was in a very vulnerable place where if I was not very mindful and intentional, I could just easily slip back to the biggest issues that I always try to overcome in the first place. And I didn't want to go back to an eating disorder.
Yeah.
So I was really, really kind of like fighting against that idea that I was slipping back with some of these behaviors. And I was a bit scared, but also I was trying to be compassionate with myself and mindful that what you're doing is really hard and is being driven by restriction. But this is not who I am. This is something that your physiology is putting you to do because you are restricted and you're hungry and you're tired and your body wants some escape, some pleasure.
Mm.
And probably that's mostly the way you are currently finding some joy. And that's okay. As I get really try to talk myself and coach myself through that, because I was really struggling. And so once I got through my first competition, that became even harder, because now I know the feedback. I've got my first experience on a stage.
Mm-hmm.
What could I've done better? Again, I'm a high achiever. That's in my mind. And with the idea and the possibility that in that other federation that I would compete in 4 weeks, I could win my pro card straight away. That was like, I am fucking doing this.
Yeah.
And so those extra 4 weeks were even harder than ever, because first I was already tired. I have a really, really high degree of dieting fatigue. And on top of that, I knew I needed to work even harder and lean down even more. So if you start thinking about putting all the pieces together, I had more binge episodes, I had more sleep ups, but because I knew that I was so close, the guilt and the that relationship with food that came and started strong was kind of like crumbling at that point in time. It was
Mm.
really hard.
Mm.
Um, was nothing wrong about my relationship with my body, but it was that high achiever in the back of my mind that you are failing. And this is that whatever you're doing is wrong. Like those thoughts of guilt and knowing that whatever when I chose me on top of the competition, I was feeling bad. I was feeling guilty
Yeah.
because you shouldn't be doing this. You shouldn't be eating this in the first place. You should be listening to your calories, and you should be tracking every single thing that you're fucking putting in your mouth. It was so nailed down to the degree of the details that whoever is not in a strong position to start with this gets a easily lost in an eating disorder.
Yep.
Once I finished my last show, I tried my best to put together a recovery phase that would entail a slightly different approach to a normal reverse diet or recovery diet. It was going to be more of an intuitive method where, okay, I know I need to do this slowly, that I'm in a very vulnerable position with my levels of body fats where they are, my physiology where it is, and I am potentially like a sponge. I can't overeat. I can't just go crazy. So I do need to have a plan in place, which is something that, again, if you are successful setting up that exit post show, then you're going to be successful at getting into a healthy place post show. So to me, this is something that I'm really working on. I would really like to write perhaps a guidebook on my method of implementing this post-show recovery, because it's a hybrid of a recovery diet and a reverse diet. It's kind of something in between, but putting a little bit of a touch on the intuitive component. So yes, I'm still tracking, but now what I am implementing within this recovery phase is, rather than giving myself a strict target, I am giving myself a big range. So I can either aim on a day for 1,700 to 2,200 calories. Like, it's a big range. And I'm going to listen to what I need and my body. I could be aiming for 1,700, but if I want to have more carbohydrates, I'll have them. If I am full, I stop. I am just needing to learn to reconnect with my hunger cues, with my needs from the very start, because that's something that you lose a lot when you're tracking consistently and obsessively to get to the stage lean physique. So one of the things that I believe you have after you finish a show is to reconnect with your body and what does your body need. Now, it's not 100% reliable, because obviously you're in a state of depletion and hunger, and it's going to be quite natural that your hunger cues and your needs are going to completely be dysregulated and through the roof. But when you think about the main driver of binge eating, which is part of like probably at 80% of that could be that restriction, that inability to eat whatever you want, or even just more of what you like eating. That to me is like, if you know that you're so vulnerable and you have been sleeping back because of this restriction, I don't want to feel restricted anymore.
Yep.
And I don't want to go back to an eating disorder. And in order for me to not go back, I have to give myself permission, give myself a range, and give myself some grace. And that's where being on a recovery / reverse diet takes place, because it could be a reverse diet if I wanted to, because I could go a little bit slower. But I know that this is so strongly connected to how I feel,
Mm-hmm.
how depleted I am, how hungry I am. My performance is shit. I feel like I have no joy. Like I could just feel like my soul was, I didn't even have a soul. I was
Yeah.
always angry or demotivated. I looked like a zombie, literally. So just having the restrictions lifted, being able to just listen to my body, eat more of the carbohydrates, because as I mentioned, I do have such a strong eating habits that even if I wanted to overeat, what I'm going to overeat on is going to be a lot more food.
Yeah.
But my food is lots of vegetables, lots of um, protein, extra carbohydrates. Like I am not going to go and
McDonald's.
takeaways, McDonald's. Like
Yeah.
I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
So I was quite confident that my flexibility and the range I was going to give myself to do was going to just be more of the foods I enjoy eating. Even pre-contest prep, I still had those strong habits in place. So after that, it was just going to be a lot more quantity,
Yeah.
which would represent more calories and potentially would lead me to gain weight a little bit more rapidly at the very beginning. But because when you have this increase in food volume intake and extra carbohydrates, your weight can go up quite high just because of extra glycogen and extra sodium and extra food volume. Initially, you're expected to gain up to 3-4 kilos. My stage weight was about 57 kilos, 57, 58. And now I went all the way up to 61 kilos in the first week and a half. And then it stabilized as I started just feeling better and regulating my hunger cues and everything back to a 60, 59, 60 kilos. And it's been stable and hovering around that. So that means, and I'm just starting the third week post show,
Yeah.
which means that it has been quite successful because if I start reflecting what I feel and how I feel now, my cravings have gone down a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't had any binges or anything that usually happens a lot post show. I am no longer desperate for cereal or craving any of these biscuits and things that I was just always looking at my cupboard and like I need to eat some of that. Like energy wise, I feel like my soul is back. I'm training with more intention and still giving myself the grace to recover. So I'm not pushing myself to do a lot of volume. I still try with intensity, but I am not pushing myself to lift very heavy or do endless hours of cardio. I'm
Mm.
just doing little bits to use this energy that I am having more now and the carbohydrates and the fuel to feel like I'm performing better at the gym and training with like I'm actually choosing exercises that I loved doing before, but I had no energy to do them.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of like, I am doing these exercises again, and I really enjoy this. So I'm enjoying back to be at the gym and training, even if I'm not there yet 100% with my being recovered or my strength, but it slowly is coming back. So I do feel like the approach that I have implemented in this hybrid recovery method that I probably will find a better way to call it once I write the guidebook. This is what I think can be lifesaver.
I agree. I agree. I hope that you wrote the book, the guide. You said you called it recovery phase and used the word recovery with some other words so many times there. There was no such thing back in my day. Back in my day, on the stage on Saturday night, 69 kilos, me. Sunday at 1 o'clock, 81 kilos. So there was no such thing as a recovery phase back in my day, which shows my age. But I love that you said that recovery, because you were so clear on how tough it is in your body. And that word tough, it, as you were speaking through that whole time, I was thinking mental toughness, mental toughness. When I did bodybuilding, I did in my young days. Many years later, I joined the special forces. There's a reason that I made it into that, because that extreme mental toughness. And I decided to do a bodybuilding show, the competition they called it, and in 3 weeks training, I won the qualifier, and in 5 weeks total training, I won the Mr. New Zealand. That was mental toughness. But Astrid, I was on a pager on part of the New Zealand counter-terrorist team, ready to go back to base in 2 hours, get the guns out and go and save hostages. So I was on my game mentally. It wasn't dragging, and that mental toughness gets you through. You've really shown that, and especially in the consideration of your planning. And you've answered some of the questions I've got ahead of time. I was going to talk about reversing out. I was going to talk about the psychological impact majority of females go through. They're not happy with their body, but you already addressed that going into it. You always had a great relationship with your body, no matter what phases it was. You even said your relationship with your body was fine, but relationship with the food was suffering. But mental toughness is important. Planning is important. But I think you're a leader in the field of going into the competition, dying and coming out. So it'd be really great to read your advice. We've heard it here on the show, but it's almost like you're a psychologist, dietitian. You're so analytical on yourself. So kudos to you. I'd like to just touch on a couple more things. You said it was unhealthy. I agree that it was unhealthy, but for the listeners and viewers, here's an example of unhealthy. Former guest Chris Duffin, powerlifter, one of the 5 strongest guys in the world. Before his last competition in Australia, he dropped 20 kilos in one day. He was 3 hours away from death. Now, that's not what you and I have gone through, Astrid, is feeling tired, but it's feeling tired and hungry and so on for weeks and weeks. It is really tough. But there are a lot unhealthier sports out there to do the weight cuts the UFC guys do, the wrestlers do. It can kill you. But we have to live with it every day as people are going to go on stage with their bodies. So it is an unhealthy sport, but there's worse. My question to you, given all the things that you said so well, what's the biggest lesson or lessons that you've learned to pass on to your clients? Because you've definitely touched on how somebody listening to this that's going to go on stage could use your advice. You did that perfectly. Thank you. But what's the biggest lessons you learned for your average clients? You said you work in hospitals. I know you work with people with eating disorders and probably all walks of life. So what's the biggest lesson or lessons that you've learned during this 40 weeks and 43 now, because it's still a journey, to pass on to your clients?
I guess depends on their goals and what the background is and where they're coming from, if they had an eating disorder in the first place or
Mm,
not. What's their relationship with food or their body like? What's their environment? But I guess the kind of like overall takeaways, first of all, is to learn to do the work before you put yourself into a vulnerable, risky place to be,
mm,
especially if it's going to be at expense of your mental health, your relationship with food and your body. I think it is really important for you to give yourself time when you are doing something for the first time that you have no idea or any expectations of how things are going to look like. So you can have the space, the time to become into that person that you want to become, that you have the room and space to make mistakes, and you don't have the pressure to feel that rushed into doing something when you haven't had the the time and the experience to learn more about it and to become in all aspects mentally, physically, emotionally connected to that new person that you are going to become to show on stage. And this is if we're talking about a competitor, but I also could relate this this journey to any average client who wants to lose weight, especially those that need to lose a lot of weight. Like I currently work also with bariatric patients, bariatric surgery patients.
Yep.
And this is a very similar situation. When you are so overweight and you have so much weight to lose, and you have all these chronic conditions, knee pain, back pain, diabetes, and all of these things affecting your health, you are not able to see yourself 20 kilos lighter,
Exactly.
50, 40 kilos lighter. You are not able to imagine yourself being a different person from what you can see now, what you're living now. Again, that person on stage or that thin person, fitter person is blurry. It's really hard to see until you start putting in the work and you're still living the journey one step at a time. So living your journey one step at a time without focusing so much on the image to be neat and clear from the very beginning. Just know that it is there, and at some point it is going to be neat and clear, but don't worry about it yet. So the road is long to get there. Just focus on doing the right thing each day. What do I need to do today to become the person that I need to be in 40 weeks time? So I know I need to be on point with my training. I know I need to do my daily steps. I know I need to eat healthy and be within my calorie targets. I know I need to show up even if I don't feel like showing up. I know I have to do this every single day and just focus on one day at a time, because it is the most responsible and easier way to get to the end of a long journey. If you only focus on the end result, even sometimes you wish focus so much on, okay, I'm doing all of this to see the scale drop. But let's say that the scale doesn't drop. I spent few weeks when my weight wasn't dropping.
Weeks. Wow.
Or like it wasn't dropping that significantly. But that never stopped me, because I knew that whatever I was doing was the right thing. I knew that I was showing up. I knew that I was on a calorie deficit. I was doing my cardio. And every time I would take pictures or see myself in front of the mirror, like I fucking look leaner. Like there's no way that the scale is right. And I didn't get that to mess up with my mind, even though there were weeks where my weight would just always stay the same. Like, you know what? I'm not going to let this affect or get to me, because I know that I'm doing the right thing and I just need to keep going. So again, I wasn't focused just on the outcome or one specific thing. I was just focusing on what do I need to do to keep going in the right direction. And that is, I think, one of the biggest takeaways. And learning to still honor your needs, listen, and really learning to connect with your body hunger cues and your emotions, and learning how to not use food as a escape when you're feeling empty, because it is not going to really make much of a difference on the way you feel.
Yeah. That's the things you've said, anybody can use those. And I hope that people listening to this, if they're male physique athletes, they can take a lot away from that. You talked about stepping into your feminine midway through the show. And it was great. I watched that journey. I saw your first posing session, and I was like, and I think I messaged you back and forth to give you some unsolicited advice that I hope helped. but watching your journey from, 40 weeks to becoming a amazingly feminine woman on stage, you're connected with that. You're connected with uh, your relationship with your body, connected to allowing yourself to go through these emotions. And males, we don't do that. We're very gruff. We don't allow ourselves as much. So if you're an athlete that's a male, listen to this. I think you can take a lot away from what Astrid has gone through. Um, I know we got to wrap up. We both got to do our other things. I've got to go and be a fireman as well. So, Astrid, I want to thank you for being so open and honest. It was amazing hearing your story there. So vulnerable. You talked about that. You're vulnerable through those 40 weeks and showing it to everybody for yourself and for them to learn. I really want to thank you for that. So, congratulations on what you've achieved, and congratulations on another new you in 43 weeks.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been really nice to talk about it because I haven't really had time to actually talk about it so much and provide some of these big takeaways. Um, what's next for me is something interesting because I want to do it again now that I have taken all these feedback for myself, from myself, and from the first experience. And again, because I'm so competitive, I know that I could even do better
Yeah.
next time. And probably not so much better again with the outcome per se, because I did place really well. I could do better in the IFBB though, because that's the one that was kind of like my first ever competition, and I had no idea. My peak week wasn't great. So I could have presented a little bit better package for that one, which is something that I want to do, but also because my husband is preparing himself for a bodybuilding show as well. He got
Wow.
motivated to do it. I I want to compete with him. So it's kind of like we could compete together. And I'm sort of looking into this. I've asked a couple into the IFBB that just to if you just compete on a regional show, you could have access and qualify to compete in an Olympia amateur show. So I
Wow.
would like to do that. So
Wow.
maybe just go to a amateur Olympia show and compete as a wellness competitor, which is it would be like an international competition. And I am not aspiring to be an Olympia like to get to those levels because I'm not going to use any sort of PEDs or anything like that. But I looking at my body and my physique on stage, on my first stage and my second stage, and the people that were competing against me, I do have a pretty good physique that if I put in a lot of work, especially in the next 6 months, and I compete roughly around the same time I competed this year, and I do a shorter prep and stay roughly relatively lean within like 7 kilos away from stage weight, it is going to be much easier to lean down, but also in a period that I could build a little bit more disproportionate physique and
Hmm.
more build a little bit more glutes and a bit more quads, a bit more hamstrings. I am confident that I could present even a better package next year. And that would be it. I could potentially say once I do that, I'll just see if I just dedicate to have kids and actually have a family. But that's kind of like where I want to head next year.
Perfect. You nailed the last part of the show. Thank you again. And again, thank you for saving talking about it. We spoke about this through your journey, so thank you so much for saving it for this show. Um, Show notes are at the start narrated. People have the show links, but where is the best place someone can go to find you now they've listened to this part of the show?
Anti-diet _ dietitian is where you're gonna get my most educational content. I
Hmm.
do have another one that is Astrid APD, where that is a little bit more open to talk about my journey and my bodybuilding experience, and my YouTube channel, I guess.
Beautiful. Astrid, again, it's been brilliant reconnecting with you. Great to see your journey. Amazing to see where you're at in all the spaces, mentally, psychologically, emotionally, and physically. So congratulations to you, and congratulations to your husband taking that step. And it's been absolutely brilliant to have you back on.
Thank you so much for having me. It was awesome to talk to you and talk about my journey.
Hi, thanks for watching. I'm Damien Porter, former New Zealand Special Forces operator and former Australian police officer, and your podcast host. Please check out my new project at hownottoDieGuy.com, where I teach everything you need to know to both males and females, at-risk populations, schools, kids, and the elderly for self-defense, situational awareness, and all-round skills that every good person should know. Thanks for watching.